Welcome. The purpose of this video is to offer instruction on the use of basic features of WebEx for a host or presenter. In an earlier video, I addressed issues relevant to an attendee, looking at it from a student's perspective. I'd like to take a few moments to discuss it from the other side, from the view of the faculty or the presenter. The quick overview of material presented to the faculty in preparation for online learning may not have been absorbed by all who attended the training sessions. Obviously, there's a lot to take in when you're changing your approach from a traditional classroom to an online environment in terms of communicating with students. I hope that this video will provide some answers to questions that faculty might have in making this transition. It's not my intention to address all of the capabilities of WebEx. I'm simply going to point out how I propose to use it for my classes and make some suggestions as to what features are available to folks who may follow suit. Each faculty member has what is called a personal room. This was explained to you in the training session. So a WebEx connection can be used to hold live meetings with students. What do? We could have scheduled office hours so we can interact with the students, answer their questions, provide explanations. There could be individual meetings for purposes of demonstrating some concept or offering some instruction about some point that may not have been clear from lectures that we presented. We also could use it as a means of delivering a lecture. However, what I propose to do is to use pre-recorded video lectures and make them available through Blackboard. Then I'll use WebEx for the purpose of having a kind of live online office hour or discussion session to meet with students. So there are two ways to enter the personal room. One could be via a Blackboard link, and this was something discussed in a training session. We set up within Blackboard an additional link, label it something such as WebEx Meeting, and student simply goes to Blackboard, clicks on this, and they're brought into our personal room. In addition, a student who might not have a computer available but might be using some other device such as a smartphone, or perhaps could not install the WebEx application on their machine, might be using a browser to attend a WebEx meeting. So the student would enter an address in the web browser. I plan to provide this address to students through an announcement in Blackboard. So what do I expect to cover in this video? Starting a WebEx meeting. This is something you should be comfortable with from the training session that you had with CIT. Review the primary display that WebEx offers. What is in there? What's the content? Discuss some of the features useful for instruction or interaction. There's chat. There's participants. These are things that we have discussed previously in an earlier video, but I'll review those quickly here. Whiteboard and polling. The whiteboard and polling are two very important points that are much more applicable to the presenter than they might be to the attendee, so I did not address those in my earlier video. I'll give you some detail in how to use these in this video. Quick review of the WebEx primary display. Beneath that shared content area will be a menu. The menu consists of a bunch of icons, including a microphone, a camera or video, a share, a chat, participant display, and then a more, the ... or ellipsis shown here. And finally, a way of exiting the meeting, leaving the meeting, or as presenter, ending the meeting. I did present information on this menu in my earlier video. There are two important displays for communicating with the host and other attendees. There's the chat, which allows us to send text messages or chat messages to all attendees at once, or something interesting is, as a presenter or host, I can select an individual and direct the message to that individual only. The participants window. In the participants window, you'll see information about you as the host or presenter, but you'll also see information about other folks who are in attendance. One of the things to note here is the microphone shown for me, Tim Hartley, is not circled and there's no hash mark or line going through it. My mic is currently open. But for Hank Kiss, his mic has been muted. This is one of the additional features of the participants window from the perspective of the host. The host can mute or unmute an attendee's microphone by simply clicking on that icon. Notice also next to Tim Hartley, there's a little video camera just to the left of the microphone. This is indicating I may be sharing videos. That's also something that I can enable and disable. I personally prefer to disable the sharing of video because of the increased bandwidth that is consumed. So in terms of what students might have for accessibility in terms of network speed, I want to ensure that they get everything that I'm presenting and getting it in a timely manner. I don't want it delayed because of bandwidth overload. So that's why I tend to turn my video off. Now, what's the whiteboard? This is the new material. This material was not discussed in the earlier video. A whiteboard can be used to share text with participants. You choose the share icon from that iconic menu. You choose New Whiteboard to bring up a whiteboard, and then a whiteboard is given a name, which cleverly is called Whiteboard, but this can be changed. We change it because we can save the whiteboard. Let me go into my meeting and demonstrate this. Here I am as presenter, and what I'm going to do is go to Share Content. I click on that, and there's something called New Whiteboard. I click on that, and a whiteboard is presented and shared with the attendees. If I go to the top, it says Sharing Whiteboard. There's a little arrow. I click on that, and underneath it tells me this whiteboard is named Whiteboard, but there's a little pencil. This is the rename tool. I click on this, and I might put something like today's date. That might be quite useful because I can share the whiteboard, but I can also save it. So if I go into the tools here, I have this T over here is a text tool. I can click on that, and then I can start typing. Notice the text is coming out in red. The color is controlled down here. I click on the color, and now I'm going to transition to blue, open the text box again, and now put more text. And I've changed the color. I have capabilities of emphasizing what I put out here. Let me change the color to green, and then I'll go to this graphic here. When I click on this, I can draw a square shape, an oval shape. I also have an X and a check mark. If I click on this, I can draw a box. I can change it, and I can draw an oval. And this again allows for emphasis of text, or perhaps by changing color, we can kind of group things together. But additionally, if I'm going through some kind of a list, what I could do is go back to this tool, click something like the check marks and say, this is the one. Click something like the X and say, this is not the one. And again, whatever color is currently active is going to be applied to the graphic that you've placed or the text that you've placed in the whiteboard. Additionally, I can go here to the drawing tool, and I have two tools. I have a pen, and the pen draws rather thickly. I can also click the pencil, and the pen is much lighter. And again, I can use this for sketching or for kind of illustrating or emphasizing a point, being a little bit more dynamic. Additionally, I can draw lines, and I can draw a straight line in some way. I can draw something that is an arrowhead, or I can connect a couple points together with double-headed arrow. So a number of little tools. If I want to remove some of these things, I have an eraser down here, and then I can click on the thing that I would like to remove, and it removes it from my whiteboard. Now, the point that I wanted to make about this tool was I could actually do quite a bit with this. If I have a lot of information here, I could go up to Edit and Add Page, and now notice over here it says I'm on page number 2. There's a little up arrow here. I can go back to page 1. So if I have a lot to say within one whiteboard, I can do it on multiple pages. And just to show you what I've got here, I'll go ahead and put a little bit of text. Now, down at the bottom in the lower left, I have this little arrow, which is how I save. When I click on Save, whatever is in the whiteboard can be saved to a PDF. Now here, the name March 16th was the name I gave to my whiteboard. This is why giving a meaningful descriptive name could be helpful. What I'm going to do is change this in the file type to PDF, and what this will do is create a file called March 16 PDF. I'll save that, and now in my file system, wherever I chose to save it, there is a file called March 16th, which is a 2-page PDF document containing the information that I had collected here on my whiteboard. Notice there's also a plus and a minus for increasing or decreasing the size. And we also have the ability to fit to the width of the display, or also, this is useful if you have multiple pages. Click on the little tool, and I'll point that out again here, when what you'll see is the whiteboard displayed, and you'll see the multiple pages. And you can click between the pages and easily move through a multi-page whiteboard. So this is a nice tool for presentation. Okay, I think enough of that. Let's go back and look at something else. How do I interact with students? Well, I could do polling. I could ask little questions. Now, if I go to the ellipsis here, first off, let's dismiss this by clicking on the same thumbnail view for little boxes, and we're back to the original whiteboard. Now, I go to the ellipsis, and here are various tools that I have. There's nothing in there that says polling. If I go to the menu at the top, what I have is I have an option to add polling by going to View, and then I have Panels, and then I have Manage Panels, and polling is available, but it's not one of the current panels. I highlight this, click Add, it's now been added. Job is done. I click OK. Now I go back to the More, or the ellipsis, and lo and behold, there's polling. I click on polling, and what I've got is the ability now to create a poll, or like a questionnaire for students. Over to the right, what I have is, by type, I have multiple choice. I have some other options. Multiple answer and short answer. Multiple choice is what I'll demonstrate. I click New, and I'll add a very challenging question. Which one? And I'll say this, that, other, or none. And I've given multiple choice. Now, maybe I want to create a second question as well. So I go up there and say, how many? And I give students the choice of 1, 2, 3, 4. And now what I've done is I've simply typed things in and hit enter after presenting each option. I now have this 2-question poll. I simply say open the poll, and then attendees have an opportunity to respond. I have another attendee, as you may have noticed in the participant window. Hank Kiss is in attendance. Let's go to his session. So Hank Kiss now views the poll, and he says, let's see, which one? I think it's that. So he clicks that, and how many? I think it's 3. And he submits his response. Confirms his submission. Now we go back to the host, and the host sees the response. 1 out of 1 has currently chosen that. 1 out of 1 has clicked the other option here of C, and 1 out of 1 has finished. And again, if I had 10, 20, 30 participants, well, this would be 1 out of 10, 20, 30. At some point, the clock will expire. There's a timer here. There is a way to change that timer if you'd like to give students more time to respond, but by default it's set to 5 minutes. Now, if all my attendees have responded, I can click Close Poll, and then I have the option down here of sharing with the attendees or sharing with students the poll results. I check that, I click Apply. Now, an interesting thing about the poll is I don't have to give it right away. What I could do is I could go up here and save. I've created the questions. I could save the questions, and then I could load them at a later time. Let's say I click on the save, and a file name comes up of poll ATP, whatever that data type is. What I could do is I could say this would be the March 16th poll. I can change the name, it gets saved. I could also save the results if I have actually submitted the poll already. I'm going to avoid that for the moment. And now let's say I go in here and what I want to do is load a poll that I had saved previously. I can click here, find the file, and go down here and find, oh, there's the poll. I open that and the poll can be loaded. So I can create the poll prior to opening it and making it available to students. And what I can do then is create this in advance, load it when I have my WebEx session, and interact with students in that fashion. Now, this was a very quick presentation just to give you some idea of the features that might be useful to you. If you have questions, feel free to contact me at my school address, and I'll try to respond. Or that now perhaps you have specific questions that you can present to the CIT staff now that you see some of the capabilities. So again, I hope this turns out to be useful for you.